working with the cell phone camera today, and a couple slabs of some old steel, and I made a half circle, or I don't know what that is, hemisphere, I'm not really sure. Anyway, it's a radius from a center point out to the circle there, and that's going to allow the plow to angle. And there'll be some pins. There'll be a pin in the center, and there'll be one like somewhere around 30 degrees or something like that, so you can pull the pin and turn the plow. So that piece is going to mount on the back of the plow, and it's going to be attached to, there's a heavy chunk of angle iron here. It's pretty big chunk of angle iron. I think it's 2.5 by 2.5 by 1/4 inch thick, something like that. So I measured a chunk here 22 inches long, and it's gonna get welded. It's gonna get welded somewhere just below halfway. It's gonna get welded into the backside, and then I think this is gonna attach to the angle iron. So I think it's a good idea to use this as the bottom, this angle iron, instead of this scraper, because the guy made the point that if you're plowing and you catch a rock with it, I'm not going to put any trip springs on this plow. So on the angle that the plow is going to be standing up, that keeps it up off the ground a little bit, and it's on a slight incline, so it'll jump up over any rocks or anything sticking up. So I thought that was a good point. So I might use this as the bottom. There might be a way to make it universal. There might be a way to mount it in the middle and make it so you could use either side, but I want the mount to be closer to the bottom, so I probably won't be putting the mount in the center, because most of the weight you push is down lower. So I'm going to start cutting some of this up and glue her together with the hot glue gun, see how we can make this work. I'm going to try to fit it onto this machine here. And there's a couple of frame rails there and there. So I'm probably going to make a triangle, like a little triangle framework here that pivots up and down. And then the plow can pivot on that framework, hopefully. And the winch can lift it up and down. Well, I'm just looking at things here, and honestly it wouldn't be that difficult to put a trip spring and to put a hinge and trip spring on it, so if you come up and hit anything solid, the plow, instead of breaking something or putting all the force onto the harness, the plow tips down with the trip spring. So it's like a heavy spring that holds it in place, but if you hit something hard enough, it'll trip. So I might do that, I don't know. It seems like it wouldn't be that much extra work just to put a couple of hinges, or put maybe even one hinge on each side. So we'll see what happens. If I do that, I'll have to do a couple heavy-duty springs and some stoppers to stop it in the position where the springs will be pulling onto. But I think the next move is to finish this radius plate and start cutting some of those square edges off, and then I'll have to decide about the hinges and the trip spring, whether or not I'll do that. And once I get this made onto the plow, then I'll have to make a triangular frame to mount to the vehicle. Well, I went ahead and cut a couple more pieces of that angle iron. I got that 22-inch piece there, and I cut 2 more pieces. So I figure it's not going to be that much more work to add a trip hinge, and it'll be better just to have that there just in case. So I'm going to be putting in some vertical plates, some vertical gusset plates, and I'm going to be cutting up that steel plate there and putting them in. So I wasn't sure if I should put the plates in first or attach these hinges to the plates, but I think I can always attach the plates later to these points. So I'm just gonna go ahead and figure out what's next and just do it. Well, I think I've come up with a plan here, and I marked out the center point, so that's one of my reference points there, my main reference point. And then I'm gonna go about 1.25 inches, or just about 1 inch below the center point on each side, and try to hold my phone here. And I think I'm gonna put a bracket there and a bracket there, and that'll get me down below the center point. So I'll be pushing closer to the bottom because that's where all the weight is. And if you have too much leverage down below, your springs will trip too easy. So I'm moving my pivot point down lower here, and then I'm gonna put the angle iron in. I think I'm gonna put it in like that, and I'll have a hinge somewhere here. And I think doing it like this, having the flange stick up, that'll be like beneficial. I should be able to use that as a stopper, because when the springs are pulling the plow back, you only want it to come so far. You don't want it to come right back. So that should make a stopper, so the plow will come back and hit that. And then if you're driving forward and you hit a rock or something, it should trip down. So that's my plan for the hinge point. And then this piece here should be able to hinge back, or the plow should be able to hinge down, is what I mean. So I think I can take my radius plate and weld it or bolt it to this face here sticking out. So then I'll have my radius and a pivot. Sorry about the shakiness. I'm trying to hold my camera here with one hand, and I'm using my cell phone because I've been having troubles with my new action camera. I got some cheap action cameras, but yeah, they're nothing to write home about. So I think that's what I'm gonna do next. All these little pipes, all these little legs, they'll have to come off. Probably get a pipe wrench and spin them off. And these here, I'll keep these brackets because if you want shoes, or if you want feet on your plow. Some plows have shoes, keep them up off the ground a little bit or whatever, or extra support. So I'm going to keep those brackets there. They should be good for that. Same with the top ones, I'll keep them there just in case they come in useful, but I'll take the legs off. And pretty soon I'll start gluing things together here. I'll probably go ahead and glue these brackets on with the hot glue gun. And then I'll have to build some hinges. I might have to box the end of this big angle iron. I might have to box the ends in. I'm not sure yet. Alright. I went ahead and tack welded these on. Well, I guess I did more than tack welding. I went ahead and welded them on. I'm not sure if I'm done. I might do some more welding on them later. But I drilled holes in them, so that way I put them in the drill press first, because it'd be a pain in the ass to drill holes in them later. I've only did a pilot hole, so I'll have to enlarge the holes later with a bigger drill bit, but it should be okay because the pilot hole should guide me, and yeah, it's not too bad once the pilot hole is done. So I drilled a hole in each one, welded them on. Yeah, so I guess the next piece will be the hinge, which attaches to that angle iron, which attaches to this radius plate, I think. So fits in there with room for a washer on each side, so I can put washers in there if I need to. And I think it's going to pivot on that hole there, and I'm not sure if I'll put the pin down in the corner or if I'll put the pin in the, build a plate and put a pin in the middle, or as long as it can pivot without interfering, because this is square, so as long as it can pivot. And I was hoping to have the pin down in the corner here, because when the springs pull it back, this piece sticking up here should stop it. I was going to build a stopper, but that seems like it would be built in already if I do it that way. Yeah. Well, being that I do these things only in my spare time, I didn't get a lot accomplished today, but I got a bit more of a game plan. Made an executive decision on flipping the plow over upside down, or the opposite way, and I found some materials, and I marked out some materials like that big radius plate. I think that's about 1/4 inch thick. It's a pretty good chunk, and it took me a while to measure it and mark it and figure out what I'm going to do with it. So yeah, not a ton of progress today, but I did spend a little time just looking for the materials and deciding exactly how I'm going to do it.